Reaction is coming in from many of the Congresswoman's fellow political leaders this week. State Senator Dan Stec is offering his congratulations.
It really is an honor for her and a well-deserved one, but I think also, as importantly, it's an honor for the North Country. That somebody from our part of the state, our part of the country, has been tapped to go to literally the highest levels diplomatically of our country as the ambassador to the United Nations. She's going to be a phenomenal addition to President Trump's administration. And I'm just excited for her and, obviously for the country.
The Congresswoman will have to be confirmed, and then Governor Hochul would have 10 days to set a date for a special election to fill the open 21st District seat in the House. Yep. Is that a seat you're interested in?
Well, it's a week after my own reelection, her reelection. She's still counting votes in the West Coast as in her role as conference chair. The House isn't settled yet. So there's a lot of things that I think everyone's assuming are going to fall into place, and they may very well fall into place. But this is an opening that won't occur until January. In the meantime, now there's talk of a special session down in Albany because they're trying to preempt what their fears are of an incoming administration, which personally I think is ridiculous and arrogant, and certainly tone deaf. My colleagues in New York are on the other side of the aisle and not listening to what the voters just said a week ago. But we need to get through that. We need to seat the next Congress. We need to seat the next state legislature. And then sometime likely in January, our friend Elise Stefanik will be confirmed. And then when that happens, then that'll be the time to start jockeying for position and talking about who might be running. But, something I'm flattered. So many people have reached out to me, several dozen people, Facebook, emails, calling me. My phone's been off the hook, excited because I think they're all, wargaming this out and asking, are you interested? I'm interested in service. I'm interested in whatever's best for our country. I served our country once many years ago for 8 years in the Navy. I continue to serve our state now. Whatever the best role for me is, I'm happy with, just so long as, we put somebody in there that will continue to move the country in the direction that clearly the country and the North Country voters wanted to. And proud of my work in the Senate, and I'll continue to work hard. And, whatever happens for me personally happens. But, we got a ways to go before January.
As you mentioned, and so several weeks to go now, though, is this something you'll seriously consider? Will you give this a lot of thought and really think about possibly getting in the race?
Well, so many people have reached out to me and encouraged me, certainly we're going to look at it, and we'll do our due diligence when the time comes. But, for now, our Congresswoman needs to focus on her work, and I don't want this to be any more of a distraction to her. I mean, she's got a lot on her plate right now, changing jobs from one big job to an even bigger job, and certainly changing cities. I mean, she's just got a lot going on, and I think the last thing that any elected official wants is the movement beneath them, trying to figure out what's going to happen to that seat. That there's time for that to happen, and anything I can do to help her as she transitions and gets ready to go to New York City, I'm thrilled to do that. But in the meantime, I'll just continue to keep my nose to the grindstone, do the job here. And, if that translates to people saying, hey, Dan, we still think this is a good idea. We want you to look at it, then I'll look at it and I'll talk to the folks that I need to talk to. But it's still early yet.
In the meantime, let's talk about the election.
Sure.
Were you surprised by how well President Trump and the Republicans did here in New York State?
If I was a gambling man, I wouldn't have wanted to place a bet. You were trying to watch the news and watch the polls and what's true and what's the thing is that historically President Trump always performed better than whatever the polls were, and these polls had him doing better towards election day than either 2016 or 2020. So I thought he would outperform the polls again. I didn't think that he would outperform them as well and across the board. And I think the common theme was the Republican one, that hey, we're not happy with the spending and the economy and where inflation has been under this administration. We're not happy with where crime is and criminal justice programs, especially in these one-party states. I think people in these states are watching the news are saying, hey, it's out of control in those blue states. The immigration policy, the same. And I think that all these people are saying, hey, I want a strong America that's respected on the world stage. I want a strong border. I want low crime. I want lower inflation. I want tighter grip on spending. I think that as a group, whether it was women or blacks or Hispanics, I mean, all the pigeonholes that polls and pollsters like to place people in, when they all move one direction like they did, I mean, New York's electoral votes are still going to the Democrat, but by a much smaller margin than the last few presidential elections. And that is because I think the public has said, hey, we've had enough. This has failed. We don't want socialism. We don't want open borders. We don't want a weak foreign policy. And President Trump is offering the exact opposite of those things. I'm thrilled with his appointment of Tom Homan to be the border czar. And I know that he will truly be a border czar. He won't be a paper tiger like the last border czar was. He's going to crack down on that border, and he's going to start to fix things. And that is what the American public wants on the border.
Is your hope having Republicans in charge now in D.C., the White House, the Senate, most likely the House, that tackling the issue at the border, immigration and border security, will be a top priority?
Absolutely. And again, I mean, certainly people in your viewership in the North Country know Tom Homan is from Jefferson County. He's a North Country guy. He has a home there, so he is personally aware of the issues along the northern border. Obviously, much of the media attention in the country has been focused more on the southern border. But the Swanton sector from New Hampshire to Watertown, that stretch has seen a tremendous spike in recent years of illegal border crossings and apprehensions. So I know that Tom Homan is committed to absolutely cracking down on that. I think a lot can be done on day one. People need to remember that there were executive orders in place that President Biden repealed on day one. That I think in hindsight now, maybe he wouldn't want to publicly admit it, but I think that he wishes that he hadn't, because it created a bigger mess. And so with a stroke of a pen, he eliminated them. With a stroke of a pen, President Trump can reinstitute them. And then you put a leader in charge of that organization that's committed to fixing the problem like Tom Homan is, and you're going to have success. So I think that we will immediately see improvements in the border. The problems won't be what's happening in the new influx. I think the new influx will stop. Then the problem is going to be, all right, we have 11 million or whatever the actual number is already in the country now, thanks to the last administration largely. The challenge of, all right, how are we going to fix this? And President Trump and Secretary Homan have decided that they're going to push to start to remove people, and they're going to Pareto chart it, and they're going to start with criminals first. But again, I've talked about it before. I have a bill that would repeal the green light law for our border counties to allow local law enforcement to work with federal law enforcement. Right now, that's not allowed because of the Democrat rule in Albany coming out of New York City. They've rejected that, and we need to allow that kind of communication to occur again. So there are fights that will continue in Albany. Clearly, now we're going to have a stronger partner in the federal side of things, encouraging that or using leverage to say, hey, we want this sanctuary policy to end, or this won't happen, or that won't happen. That unfortunately seems to be one of the things that my Democratic colleagues that want a special session want to go back to Albany is to strengthen. They want to double down on sanctuary policies. They want to double down on bad policy that has led to an immigration crisis in our country and in New York City. I mean, there's a lot of legislators in New York City that are screaming about what's been allowed to happen immigration-wise and what's happening in New York City with crime and the demand on benefits and the hit that it's put on the city's budget. And I think that you're going to have a federal partner in there now that is going to give them new incentives to revisit those policies.
There are some concerns about tariffs. President-elect Trump has said that he will slap tariffs on imports coming in. When he was in office the first time, there was some tension between the United States and Canada.
Certainly there's always going to be local concerns and localized concerns. Canada has been an important trading partner of the United States, since our nation's foundings. And we want to continue to encourage that and foster that relationship. That's important. This border is the longest undefended, unprotected, unarmed border in the world because the two nations have been close friends and allies for many, many, many years. That's not going to change. We're going to continue to do that, and both of our economies can benefit. So we need to be smart with whatever tariff policies that we have. President Trump put a bunch in when he was in office. President Biden kept many of those when he took office. So everyone likes to vilify tariffs, but the truth is that there's a role for a tariff to be played when there's an obvious bad actor in the room, whether it's the Chinese dumping steel or dumping paper. I've got paper mills in my Senate district, and I've had those paper mills complain to me in past years about, and Senator Schumer has visited, the Finch paper plant here in Glens Falls years ago when I was there, and he says, "Hey, I'm going to fight the Chinese that are dumping paper into our market." So, the tariff is a realistic, legitimate tool to be used, and there's a time and a place to use these tools. But, I mean, I think everybody realizes that we have a good trade relationship with Canada. We want to make sure that they're not collateral damage in other rights that wrongs that we're trying to right on other places with other partners, like for example, China.
With all this set aside for the moment on the special election, as you look at Albany, as you get ready for a possible special session, as you look at the session getting underway in just a little more than a month or so now, what are your priorities for this coming session if you stay where you are and you are heading back to the state Senate?
As always, the big picture here in New York State is we spend too much. It's a spending priority problem that we have. When $4.5 billion go to New York City, of state dollars to New York City, to be given away to illegal immigrants, and we can't fix roads, bridges, broadband, nursing homes. We have a nursing home crisis in upstate New York that can be fixed, but it's going to take some money. And when $600 million will fix that problem, and we don't have that $600 million for nursing homes, but we do have $4.5 billion for illegals in New York City, that's a spending priority problem. And until we fix that problem, we are going to have high taxes, and we're going to have producers leaving the state. When we're telling people that your politics aren't welcome here, your business isn't welcome here because we're going to regulate you, and we don't like the way that the things that you make, we send that message to employers. We will continue to be chasing people that add to the tax base out of the state, and our own immigration policies, our sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies, which are state policies, not federal policies. When we do that, we turn a magnet on to bring people here so that we can turn around and give them tax dollars. That's why New York's struggling. So I'll continue to fight on that. Obviously, there are always local controls. I want to make sure that our closed prisons, so we do something with them, and I'll continue to fight those fights. But I want to make sure that any prison changes that we're making are good for our corrections officers. We've made our prisons less safe. That's a very relevant issue in the North Country because we do have several correctional facilities here. Broadband, roads and bridges. I mean, this is boring stuff, but this is important stuff too. I will continue to focus on that. But the big picture is we're a high tax state, we're a high regulation state, and we are leading the country in out-migration because of that. And we need, if we're going to right the ship here, we need to revisit those policies.